Story 1. Boredom is not having to do things all the time, working, going out, meeting people just for the sake of it. Since everything entailed a risk, I did things based on what I really wanted or needed to do. The rest of the time, I could just sit still and wander. Story 2. I miss that feeling of sharing something important together, like having a sleepover or going on an adventure. I also miss how nature was able to catch a breath, like dolphins returning to the Venice canals. Story 3. I liked how everything was at a slower pace of life for a bit. The years 2020 to 2022 felt like how life should be lived, at a more relaxed pace. I am also grateful because it was a hard time for many people, and social isolation is difficult. Story 4. How creative people were with their alone time. I loved watching people learn to make bread, develop their Animal Crossing islands, explore new or unique styles, and generally get into new things and be excited about them. I feel like there is less emphasis on hobbies now that we are back to socializing as a hobby again. Story 5. Absolutely nothing. I am in healthcare, so I had to work. When I went to work, there were sick, dying, and dead people everywhere. Story 6. Personal space. People at the grocery store who stand right behind you are frustrating. I want my 6 feet back. Story 7. I sat at home and did nothing for days on end without feeling unproductive or lazy because that is what we were supposed to be doing. Story 8. 3 of my 4 grandparents are alive. I did not get to say goodbye to any of them, mostly due to restrictions. Story 9. My daughter died in November 2020. I strongly condemn cancer and COVID-19 for making her last months difficult. I also strongly condemn the year 2020. Story 10. How empowered I felt. I embarked on a new career in the healthcare field during the dawn of coronavirus disease 2019, and I felt like I was doing something important for once. Now, I can barely motivate myself to get out of bed. Story 11. My local corner store had a very unique slushy flavor in 2020. It was so good. Since 2021, I have never been able to find the flavor again. Story 12. The free time during quarantine should have been used to develop and fine-tune skills. I am an artist, but I spent most days rotting on the couch. I would take a walk almost every night, which was good. But still, I regret not doing more. Story 13. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was in severe depression and grieving deeply due to the loss of my grandparents. The anxiety that coronavirus disease 2019 caused did not help any of it. I was drowning. Story 14. Staying home, I thrived during the lockdown. I had a great routine and time to focus on my health and my dogs. I wish I could sustain that lifestyle forever. Story 15. There was no anxiety that I should be out doing something with my life because we literally could not. Story 16. I thought it was fun. Kind of like a blizzard. All snowed in and cuddled by the fire, except we could enjoy the outdoors. Story 17. Being home with my family, we honestly made the best of it. We settled in and remote work and school worked for us. Story 18. Honestly, nothing. I couldn't see family and friends. Friends moved away. I was afraid for the health of people I loved. I had a full-time job and was homeschooling young, wild kids. Economic fears. The year 2020 was very difficult. Story 19. I loved how it brought my family together. My wife and I both worked remotely from home, and the children attended online classes. It was nice to always be together, especially as they are now off to college. Story 20. Everything slowed down. For better or for worse, there was a moment when we could stop to smell the flowers. I think of that time as being in the eye of a hurricane. After 2022, the second half of the storm hit, and now the wind is just blowing the other way. Story 21. Brought to slow down and take a pause, and not feeling guilty about it since everyone was in the same situation. Story 22. Nothing really. I miss spending quality time with my wife and daughter daily. We used to go for a walk around the block every day and play I Spy. The uncertainty affected me a little, just with work and how things were going at the time. Story 23. Everything was quieter. No traffic. The subway and bus were empty. I was the only passenger going to work as an essential worker, so for me nothing stopped. It was business as usual, only quieter with fewer people. I could meditate without interruptions on the bus during the commute. I could listen to the birds, no cars, no city noises. Story 24. I really loved the lockdowns in my city. No traffic. No bustle. Homeschooling our little girl. Twitter was still free of Elon Musk. Good times for me. Story 25. My hopeful outlook for the future. I was in inpatient residential facilities for most of the year, so COVID was not a significant factor for me since I missed most of it. I remain optimistic that I will eventually find a good career with the degree I am pursuing, as I did before, though less so. However, I am less optimistic that I will truly be happy or content. Instead of experiencing happiness or contentment, I see myself coast by indifferent with semi-consistent financial peace of mind, which, don't get me wrong, is very nice but not what I naively envisioned. Story 26. Working from home, a more relaxed lifestyle, stimulus payments, my aunt was still alive. A good time in a bad time. Story 27. I like that I received more money on unemployment because I work in a school and they all closed than what I actually get paid for going to work each day now. Story 28. I miss my online classes. Teachers did not care about what you did behind the screen. I slept through many classes but still got decent scores. Story 29. My ex and I met during the start of COVID. We lasted 2 years before everything started to fall apart. I should have fought harder for her. I should have done more and never given up, but I didn't, and I have to live with that. Do you know the scene where Yelena fights Hawkeye in Hawkeye Season 1? That represents my brain and my heart going at it. Story 30. Going to football games and being able to stretch out, going on vacation when it was not crowded. Las Vegas was amazing. Work was busy and easy with great sales. Story 31. Living with my sister and the movie nights we had, the focus on nature and exploring, the empty streets, the novelty of it all, and my best friend. For the latter, the kind of extreme political tension from the George Floyd era made us go from bending within the same progressive box to breaking altogether. Story 32. Spending time at home without commuting an hour a day. Getting enough sleep for the first time ever and not having plans, such as, well, maybe we could go for a walk this weekend? Story 33. How everyone was awkward and no one had anything to say. 2020 was the peak for a weird high school freshman, and everyone was less sensitive or rude compared to now. I missed the freedom. I can't do fun makeup now without someone telling me it's awkward, or I can't like dresses, or I'm trying too hard. I want the time back when I could just lie in my front yard and no one would look at me strangely. I missed the Dream SMP before it changed and Technoblade died. I miss doing the most random art projects at 2 a.m. on a school night, and I miss being an introvert without pressure to do anything. I'm an adult now, so I miss all the freedoms of being a kid, but I really miss sitting on my floor with glass animals playing while painting. Though some people now need the criticism, they went too far. Story 34. How quiet the world was. People bonding over Tiger King, bread making, and Dalgona coffee. Motivating each other to go for walks while crossing the road when you see someone coming up the path. One thing I really miss was going to the grocery store about an hour before closing, having the whole store to myself and buying 50% off ice cream pints due to decreased sales. A big thank you to those on the front lines during the pandemic. In all seriousness, it was a very difficult and tragic time for many. Story 35. The era, even though we were going through COVID-19 and police brutality, I miss the fun, the energy, being on TikTok when it started getting popular. Story 36. All the free time I had during quarantine. Everyone talks about how horrifying it was that they could not see their friends face to face for more than a few days and how terrible quarantine was, but I could not have been happier with how things went. Aside from difficulties buying groceries, I never got sick, so I do not have a bad memory of it. Story 37. Everything is different now since the pandemic. Misery is everywhere. I miss 2007 and the years before. We have come too far with technology, and no one communicates in person as much or enjoys it. There is too much anxiety. Life is not the same. Saddens me. The 1980s were perfect. Story 38. The unstructured time with my husband, who did not have to travel at all, was valuable. We bought a boat and spent a lot of time on one of the upstate New York Finger Lakes with family and friends until we sold it in 2023. Our daughter was 4 months old in January of 2020. That was a really great year in many ways. Story 39. Daily walks. Tiger King mania. Time felt less important, like staying up late without consequences because I could get up later since work was at home. Story 40. Although quarantine was stressful, I lived in the mountains and was paid to work from home. I hiked a lot and thought about people in cities. I pictured tall apartment buildings in places such as China. I considered all the people confined in those small spaces and realized how much better my situation was being able to hike in the mountains. It helped make quarantine more bearable. Story 41. Not one thing. My workplace only closed for one day. After that, we were one of the only stores open. Hours were longer, the store was crowded, and customers were more demanding than usual. At lunchtime, there were almost no fast food places open. Thankfully, our store brought in food from the closest that was open. As much as I liked Cane's chicken fingers, I am in no hurry to eat them again. After work, there was nowhere to go but home, where my wife was in a more or less constant state of health-related panic. Understandable, but most of that was false alarms. I am glad everyone else had time to relax, take time to be with their family, and work on all the household projects they had been putting off. Honestly, I wish I had had the opportunity to do the same. What I really wish is that it had not happened at all. Story 42. Through wild parties with everyone using their stimulus payments and unemployment benefits for party supplies. I graduated high school in 2019, so I was in my prime before I got a real job and started dealing with adult responsibilities. I even invested half of one of my stimulus payments into Dogecoin and made a quick $50,000 that I used as a down payment for my current home. Story 43. For a brief moment, it was introvert heaven. In late 2019 to early 2020, stores open 24/7 were still operating. It was also amusing to watch extroverts, people who have never taken time to be alone or interact more with their significant others, self-destruct. I guess I missed the quiet and slowness, as most people mention. Story 44. I was getting paid weekly while staying home and doing nothing because honestly, a day before the COVID-19 shutdown happened, I was promoted to customer experience coordinator, so it was worth it. Story 45. I felt like I explored myself more creatively, doing movie marathons, finding new music, and discovering new talents. I was constantly doing music covers while being distracted from school. Life has evolved a lot since then, but I appreciate going through the hardships of that year rather than seeing it as a waste. However, 2020 definitely damaged my view of the world. I feel better living in my own space. Story 46. Our job was giving really good retention bonuses for a while. Sadly, it did not last long, and things just got harder. It was a rough year, but I missed those bonuses. Story 47. My wife and children were home with me all the time. There was none of the previous hustle and bustle that comes with work and busy high school schedules. No getting up to drive them to school. No looking on Find My iPhone to learn where to pick them up. No sports practices. No work trips for my wife. Just constant together time. We encouraged them to organize touch football and basketball games in the park with their friends so they were not totally isolated. We focused on the opportunities the shutdown presented, like building new habits, catching up on sleep, and learning to cook. We emphasized that this was probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go slowly and not be in a hurry. They went for their physicals in the spring of 2021. The doctor screened them for mental health and told me our boys were the best adjusted kids he had seen during the pandemic. Story 48. Teleworking was somewhat enjoyable for the 2 months I was allowed to do it. Unfortunately, my job often requires access to information that cannot be viewed at home, and half of my office apparently has poor internet connections, so we returned to working on site. Story 49. Global solidarity. There was a unique shared experience around the world that connected people in a strange but powerful way. When was the last time you saw something like that happen? Story 50. Absolutely nothing. 2020 was the worst year of my life. The pandemic destroyed my mental health and stressed me out so much that I developed an immune disorder. Story 51. I live in Hawaii, and the beaches have only a handful of people. The water is very clear, and the reef has healed. Story 52. Discovering myself as I matured on a mental and physical level. Starting to pay attention to the real world and learning a new skill. Story 53. Social distancing, coughing into elbows, and not shaking hands. In other words, stay away from me. Stop coughing into your hands and touching everything. I do not want to shake your hand. Story 54. Being genuinely hopeful that we may actually experience a massive die-off due to coronavirus disease 2019, which looked very promising at the beginning of the year. Do not miss the disappointment at all, however. Story 55. I made the most money of my life and had the most free time I will ever have, along with a general sense of hope for the future. Story 56. Everything was so peaceful. Fully remote work, no stressful social obligations, and plenty of time to take long walks and listen to podcasts. I lost 30 pounds and never felt better in my life. For me, it really revealed how destructive the corporate rat race is to our mental and physical health. Since returning to the office in 2023, I have gained back every one of those 30 pounds plus a few more, and I am back in the full throes of depression. Story 57. Going to work and going straight home, then staying home was completely acceptable, and you were not expected to do much else. Those were great times. Story 58. Being completely isolated and told by Dr. Anthony Fauci not to go anywhere or risk contracting coronavirus disease 2019 and dying, I spent months with a pleasant blonde woman at my house. We drank a lot and watched television. By order of the government, it was a perfect excuse for heavy drinking and binge-watching cable television. Story 59. Absolutely nothing. I was diagnosed with cancer at the end of 2019 and started 7 weeks of radiation and chemotherapy in January 2020. Just as soon as I finished radiation and chemotherapy, the coronavirus disease hit and pretty much everything shut down. Because my immune system was compromised, the only time I left the house was to go to the cancer center for checkups. Story 60. Lockdown. I really loved it. Not the people dying, of course, but just not having to go out or travel to work. Story 61. I bought my first house just before the pandemic. I was off for most of the year with full pay due to the lockdown. I had a lot of leisurely, stress-free time to enjoy my new home and neighborhood. Story 62. Everyone kept to themselves. There was a 6-foot personal space limit. You only socialized with the people who truly cared. Animals started returning from the wild and walked among our streets in awe of all we had built. Technology became more about staying in touch. Science and politics were focused on finding a solution to a problem the entire world was facing. Story 63. The feeling that it would eventually all end and return to normal. I was obviously naive, but it was nice to have that hope. Story 64. I liked working from home and having a good excuse when not in the mood to meet people. Yes, I am an introvert. Story 65. Having the farm to ourselves for 20 hours a day was beautiful weather and absolutely idyllic. After the caretakers had visited, cleaned out their horses, and left, we shut the driveway gates and just enjoyed ourselves. Story 66. Take it back to mid-2019. COVID-19 was affecting people in the fall of 2019 in the United States, China, and possibly other countries, but it was reported as flu, bronchitis, or pneumonia. We had friends who were sick with flu and bronchitis in October of 2019, and the symptoms were the same as COVID-19. Story 67. Being an introvert and enjoying my life at home during COVID-19 was the best feeling ever while the whole world was going crazy. Story 68. Nothing. I lost my job. I lost my housing and had to live with my parents, which was not a bad situation but not great for my mental health. I was dating a man who was really bad for me. I am so much happier now. Story 69. My father-in-law was alive. I was receiving unemployment benefits and back pay, so I was financially stable during that time. I had my car, which still worked. My husband and I were closer and not yet parents. We did things together like camping, traveling, attending concerts, nature walks, going to the movie theater, having date nights, and going out of town for a night or two. I was only 26 and about 20 pounds lighter. I went to the gym regularly and was on Suboxone then, which is much better than my current medication, methadone. I had a lot more free time and was able to do self-care activities, so my mental health was in a better place. Story 70. I had a coronavirus disease 2019 romance with someone. It was long distance, but we talked and did video chat every day, just getting to know one another in the midst of the weirdness. It was new and felt like something good and important, but sadly did not go anywhere. I still miss it, 10 out of 10. Story 71. Toilet paper shortage memes. I ended up getting a bidet for the main bathroom. I was going to post one here until I realized I cannot. Here is a link to one instead. Story 72. Getting paid to be alive was nice. It is also depressing that the increased unemployment payments are almost as much as I get paid to be a college teacher. Story 73. My home. We lost it when both my partner and I lost our jobs and could not make payments any longer. Now I am employed. My partner has become disabled, and we are facing eviction again. Story 74. Grandparents are still alive mainly. Clean air, no traffic, people leave me alone, less drama. I was actually respected at work by the public in healthcare. Story 75. It was very affordable to buy or rent a home. Actually, everything was cheaper. Groceries, car insurance, rental cars, hotels, and more. I also had a lot of alone time, which I love. There was no pressure to meet people all the time in person for business or socializing. Story 76. Having a job where I was threatened by my manager to pay invoices that were obviously fraudulent while they collected whistleblower awards under my name. Story 77. My mental health suffered because I worked at a grocery store all the time and was constantly reprimanded. Story 78. I do not remember exactly what was happening in 2020 without looking up a list of movies and events from that year. Story 79. The first few months were fun, but I really wish I could go back and, 1. Not work so hard. Apparently, none of my colleagues were, so they assumed I wasn't either while I was working very hard at home. Exercise and take care of my health instead. I definitely gained about 50 pounds that year. I didn't think I was depressed, but looking back, I realized I was constantly full, never hungry, for almost 2 years. By Bitcoin, I would rather be rich now, thank you. Story 80. Attending university, watching animated shows, mostly the university. I am a social worker. The classes I took at university were amazing, but applying that knowledge in my work was heartbreaking. I took that bachelor's degree journey for granted. Story 81. I don't know exactly, other than a small trip my family and I took for a week. There is not much I miss about that year. If anything, when I was in online school, I didn't need to get out of bed or wake up early. Otherwise, that year felt like a blur to me most of the time. Story 82. Having a global pandemic meant working from home and non-stop overtime at the airline. I was earning significantly more money back then. Story 83. All 10 games in each round of the Premier League were played at different times, making it possible to watch all of them live. Story 84. My husband was still alive. We lacked for nothing financially. We spent our days together semi-retired and took a little vacation. It was better than we realized at the time. Story 85. My job closed with pay for 2 months, and it was the most peace I have felt in ages. Plus, my best friend was still alive. I would have loved for her to meet my fiancé. Story 86. I missed the whole lockdown period. I did not get to enjoy it the first time because I was stuck in a 2-year house renovation. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.